We have to begin today with a very big mazel tov to Rabbi Ephraim
Thank you so much.
on the engagement of his son,
Yeah, mazel.
Benji, Binyamin,
Yossi.
Binyamin Yosef. I grew up with him. Shabbos dinners together.
Yeah, Baruch Hashem. Yeah, listen, nice Yiddish girl.
A nice Yiddish girl, Baruch Hashem.
Studious city.
May it be the continuation of the Jewish chain.
Yeah, for sure. 100%. Yeah.
Amen. And you deserve it.
And if it wasn't for Chabad, Sherman Oaks, they could have ended up marrying, God forbid, chicks or something.
Yeah, this is the power of Hebrew school. But in the spirit of good news, the Jewish community should see much more good news, smachot, for all people in all areas. Hilchos bias Hamikdash perek shishi, the laws of coming into the temple, chapter 6. Today, tomorrow, the next day, we're starting kind of like another section of these laws, another type of Kohen that cannot serve, and that's a Kohen that has a mum. Mum means a blemish, physical, bodily defect. In the Holy Temple, because it represented the perfect place where Hashem came down, so physically also it had to manifest in that every single person serving in the temple had to also be physically perfect. Today we're all into inclusion, and with disabilities, they can also be part of it, and it's true.
Diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Diversity,
DEI has destroyed the country.
but there's also good diversity, and there's good inclusion. And there's been a tremendous amount of improvement in our attitudes to people with disabilities. But that's only for outside the temple, because outside the Beis Hamikdash is a place of imperfection, so imperfection can thrive. In the Beis Hamikdash was a place only for perfection. And so the Kohanim also had to be perfect in their bodies. That's one of the explanations given for why this mitzvah was so important. And we're going to be defining at length what constitutes a mum, what's called a blemish, and in which cases the Kohen could and couldn't serve. And by the way, even if a Kohen had a blemish, there was a job for him in the temple, as we'll see in the end of today's chapter. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, let's go in order. Halacha Aleph. Kol kohen sheyesh bo mum. Any Kohen that has a mum that has a blemish. Bein mum kavua, bein mum oiver. Whether it's a permanent blemish or it's a passing one. Right? You get a scar and then it heals, but for now you're blemished. Lo yikanis lamikdash min hamizbeach v'lifnim. You cannot go in. Not only you cannot serve, you can't go into the temple premises from the Mizbeach and inwards. Let me see if I can find the picture here. Oh, here it is. More on this side. From the Mizbeach and past, he cannot go there. Shenemar, as it says clearly in the verses that deal with the Kohen, that has a blemish, it says, El hapareiches lo yavai. The word begins with the word ach. Ach, however, El hapareiches lo yavai. Such a Kohen who has a blemish shall not come to the curtain. Ve'el hamizbeach lo yigash, nor should he come close to the altar. V'im avar v'nichnas loike, afal pisha lo avad. If he transgresses and he goes in there, he gets lashes even if he didn't serve. V'im avad b'mikdash, certainly if he did serve in the Beis Hamikdash in this state of having a physical blemish, pasal v'chilel avoda, he disqualifies, he desecrates the service. V'loike af al ha'avoda, now he gets a second set of lashes for serving. One set of lashes for coming in, a second set of lashes for serving. Shenemar, as it says in a different verse in the same passage, Asher yiyeh boimum lo yikrav. If there will be in him a blemish, he shall not come close. We're going to see in the portion of the Torah that talks about the laws of the mum, it's very repetitive, a lot of extra verses. So from each verse, we learn another halacha. So in this case, from this verse we learn, Mipi Shmuel lamdu, from tradition, we understand this verse to mean, this extra warning is don't come close to serve. As a matter of fact, the very next words are, you shouldn't come close to offer the bread of your God, which means, avodah. Halacha beis, v'chein bal mum oiver she'avad, and so too, if a person had a passing blemish and he did service, pasal v'loike, he disqualifies the service and he gets lashes. Shenemar, how do we know this? Another verse, it says, kol ish asher boimum lo yikrav. Any man that has a blemish should not come close. Why repeat it? What's any man? From tradition, we understand this verse to mean an extra warning to a person with a passing blemish. However, unlike, let's say, the last 2 days chapters, or 3 days, impure Kohanim, who served they get death by the hands of heaven, or if you serve without washing your hands and feet, death by the hands of heaven. Here, a balmum, a person who has a blemish that serves in the temple, doesn't get the death penalty, only lashes. Halacha gimel kol hamumin kulan. All blemishes. Echad shahayu by mitchilas b'riyasai ve'echad shanildu by achar came. Whether they were with him from the beginning of his birth, whether they came later. Bein oivrin, bein she'enon oivrin, whether they're passing or not passing. Hareze pasol ad she'avoiru, they are disqualified until they pass. In other words, if they're a passing mum, then of course once they pass, you're no longer disqualified. But till they pass, it's equally disqualified as to a permanent blemish. Mum kavua, what's an example of a permanent blemish? Now the Rambam's going to get into much more detail tomorrow, but he's just giving you examples to bring out the point. What are examples of a permanent blemish? Could go in shever regel or shever yad, a broken hand or a broken foot. That's a permanent blemish. Now obviously we're not talking about a case like today where today, sometimes you could fracture a bone. Well, first of all, you could fracture a bone and it come back into place with a cast. But here the Rambam's talking about literally broken. It's broken and it's irreparable. That's permanent. Umum oiver, a passing blemish would be kigoin garav o yalefes. Like, so garav is usually translated as dry boils. A boil that doesn't have much pus. It's just a puffed up area. Yalefes comes from the word lilapet, to wrap around. It's a pus-filled abscess. It's an oozing boil, a wet boil. V'hi chazazis. It's also called chazazis in common language. Yalefes is the Torah word. Chazazis is the Mishnah word. Even though I just picked examples, says the Rambam, that are straight in the Torah, but it's not only the blemishes that are written in the Torah that disqualify a Kohen. Ela kol hamumin hanirin beguf. Any blemish that can be seen on the body can disqualify a Kohen. Shenemar, as it says, koil asher boy mum. Anybody that has a mum. Nikol makim in any case. Ve'elu aksuvim atayra dugmahin. All the examples written in the Torah are just that, examples. But there are many more. Halacha hey shleisha minei mumin. There are three categories of blemishes. Yesh mumin shehin poislen hakoyin milavit ve'habehema milikarev. There are some blemishes that disqualify a kohen from serving and an animal from being brought. The next set of laws are called Hilchos isurei mizbeach, the animals that cannot be brought on the altar as a sacrifice. And over there also, in halacha, we have the idea of tamim, it has to be unblemished. So the Rambam says some blemishes cross both categories. They disqualify a kohen from serving and an animal from being brought. V'yesh mumin shepoislin ba'adam bilvad milavait. There are some blemishes that only disqualify a person from serving. They don't disqualify an animal. V'yesh mumin she'ein poislin. But there are a third category of blemishes that don't even disqualify at all, technically speaking. Aval mipnei marisa ayin amru. But for the optics, for the way it looks, the sages said, shekol kohen sheyesh be'echad mihan einei oved, that any kohen that has one of these doesn't serve. And the Rambam again will go into great detail to define each of these tomorrow and the next day. Halacha vav kol mi sheyesh be'mum shepaisel ba'adam ubi behema ve'avad. Any person that has the first category, the worst category of blemish, the blemish that disqualifies both a person and an animal, ve'avad, and he did service in the temple with such a blemish, bein b'shegeg, bein b'mezid of dasipsula. Whether he did it inadvertently or purposely, what he did is disqualified. If he did it purposely, he also gets lashes. That's the punishment. Anybody who only has category B, lower category, a blemish that only is unique to people, it only disqualifies people. It doesn't disqualify animals, and he did service, even though he also gets lashes, he didn't disqualify the service. If you only had category C, the lowest level, things that are only disqualified for the optics, for the way they look, no lashes, plus what you did is kosher, because the bottom line is it's not really a mum. Only the sages said it. Halacha zayin, ein paisel ba'adam ela mumin shebegali. The Rambam mentioned it in passing, now he makes the point clearly. The only blemish which disqualifies a person is a blemish that can be seen. It's on the outside of the body. Aval mumin shebechalal haguf, but a blemish in the cavity of the body, inside the body. Maybe his intestine, maybe his kidney was taken out. Maybe his spleen was removed. Maybe his intestine as a whole was punctured. Even though according to halacha, you become a treifa, mortally ill, you won't live for 12 months. Avaydasek Sheda, what he does in the service is kosher. Shanemar, as it says, Torah gives the example, Shever Ragel, or Shever Yad, a broken foot or a broken hand. Ma'elu Begalui, Afkal Begalui, the same way these are revealed, everything is also revealed. Now the Rambam says here that if you take your kidney out, you become a treifa, you won't last for 12 months. Today people donate their kidneys and they last for many years. So there's somewhat of a debate as to how to understand it. Either this is one of those things about which we say nishtanu hativim, nature changed, or the Rambam could be referring to where both kidneys were taken out. Halacha ches ha'arel harehu keben nechar. A person who doesn't have a bris, uncircumcised, is like a goy. He's like a Gentile. Shenemar, as it says in Yechezkel, kol ben nechar erel leiv erel basar. Every foreign person, a person with a stuffed heart and a stuffed flesh, means blocked with the foreskin. Torah, it means it compares ben nechar to the arel. Lefichach, therefore, arel sha'avad, if an uncircumcised Kohen did the service in the temple, chila lavedasev like a kizar sha'avad. He disqualifies the service and he gets lashes like a non-Kohen who would have served. Aval ein chayav misa, but no death penalty. Halacha tes kohen shahaya neisei nashim ba'avera. If a Kohen married women in a sinful way, Kohen marries a divorcee, eine oivet, he cannot do the service. Ad she'adiru beis din al das rabim, until the court subjects him to a vow by the consent of the public. Basically means not you're taking a vow. You're taking a vow with our terms, on our terms. So it can never be undone. He must take a vow that he's not going to do any more sins on the court's terms. Then he can serve, even though he hasn't yet divorced his wife. Once he takes the vow, he can serve. The yored umegaresh goes down and must divorce his wife. Also, if he was a Kohen who would consistently become impure to dead people, which is forbidden for a Kohen, Pasul, he's disqualified from serving in the temple, until he takes upon himself in court a vow that he's not going to ever do that again. If he serves, transgresses and serves before he takes the vow, or before he accepts upon himself this resolution, even though it happens to be that he's married in a sinful way, he doesn't disqualify the service. If a Kohen did service, then they put him through some testing, and it turns out that he's actually a chalal. His father married somebody improper, and he's not even a Kohen. Fascinating concept. Retroactively, what he did is kosher. He just can't go in the future.
Because he didn't know.
Yes, this is one of the sources that even a chalal has some element of kahuna to him. At least retroactively speaking, that you can do, that you can count a service as having worked before the discovery of being a chalal. And if he serves, he doesn't disqualify the service, even in the future. Shenemar, as it says, Barech Hashem Cheloi, Ufayal Yodav Tirtza. This is part of Moshe's blessing to the tribe of Levi. May Hashem bless his army, and the work of his hands should be accepted in goodwill. The word Cheloi, Af Chulin Shabai Tirtza. Cheloi could also mean Chulin, the mundane, the unholy. Even the unholy Kohanim should be desirable. So, huge concept. Usually, today, we don't allow a chalal to go do Birkat Kohanim. We don't allow him to be called for the Kohen Aliyah. But in the temple, also wasn't allowed to serve, but if he did, he doesn't disqualify the service. Halacha Yud Aleph, Beis Din Haggadah. The high court, this is the high court sitting in the temple, in their chamber. Hayu Yeshvin Belishkas Hagazis, they would sit in the chamber of hewn stone. There was a chamber on the side of the Beis Hamikdash. The Ikar Maaseyam Hatadir, what were they doing all the time? What was the main, most frequent cases they were adjudicating? Shayu Yeshvin V'danin HaKahuna. They were sitting, judging cases of kahuna. They would check the Kohanim, check their pedigree and their physique, blemishes. Any Kohen who was determined had a disqualification in his pedigree, bad yichus. He had to put on black clothing, wrap himself in a black enwrapment like a talis, and leave the temple courtyard in embarrassment. Anybody who was found to be complete and kosher, levish levanim, would put on white, beautiful clothes, and would go and serve with his fellow Kohanim. What if a person was found to be kosher pedigree, but he has a physical defect, so he can't serve? What could he do? Yoshev belishkas ha'etzim. He would sit in the special chamber known as the chamber of the wood, where they would collect wood for the altar. Umisaleya eitzim lamaracha, and he would check the wood for worms, the one that was going to be used on the pile of wood. So actually, it was a very important job.
Eitzim with tolaim
Was not kosher. Yeah, wormy wood was not kosher for the altar. Had to be pure of worms. So this chamber was occupied by the Kohanim who had blemishes. Also, the chaylik b'kadshim im anshe beis av shalei v'oichel. On his day, when his family would come to serve in the temple, he can take a portion of any sacrificial meat. Even if you have a mum, you cannot serve, but you can eat. Shanamar, as it says, in the same passage about a person that has a mum, lechem elekov mikodesh hakadashim u'min hakadashim yoichel. The bread of Hashem, of his God, from the holiest of holies and from the regular holy ones, he could eat. He shouldn't come close to serve them. But checking wood and eating, you could be a part of that.